Now and forever, we bring IT to life.
To begin. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for standing by. Good day and welcome to the Connect with Remedy monthly webinar series. Today's webinar is being recorded. At this time, I would like to turn the conference over to your host, Mr. Greg Keoy. Please go ahead.
Thank you, and welcome everyone to our Connect with Remedy monthly webinar series. Today we're going to cover Smart IT SP1 news and installation tips and tricks. We have three different presenters today: Jon Hall, a lead product manager; we have Ashish, Bhurat, a lead SQA engineer; and finally Adrian, a product development architect. And so to start it off, I'll turn it over to Jon.
Hi there, my name is Jon Hall. I'm a lead product manager in the BMC Remedy ITSM product management team, and it's really good to talk with all of you today. Today's webinar is focused on Service Pack 1 of Smart IT, and I thought it'd be useful to spend maybe 20 seconds just reaffirming what Smart IT is and why it's so important for Remedy and for Remedy customers. So Smart IT's objective is to be a transformative new user experience for ITSM professionals. It's available at no extra cost to Remedy users from 764 upwards, and it really is designed persona by persona to set new expectations for social IT, for mobility, for collaboration, and for assistance. And there's a lot of material on the BMC website to tell you more. Today we're going to focus on what has come out just at the end of last calendar year with Service Pack 1. So we'll run through those new features, and I'm actually going to show you a demonstration. Then I'm going to hand over to my colleagues to look at the installation and some of the tips and tricks around that, and how we can extend Smart IT's capabilities from the default configuration by exposing new fields and configuration options. But firstly, let's talk about Service Pack 1. So when we released Smart IT originally, right at the end of September, we released both a browser version and a tablet version for iOS and Android tablets. With Service Pack 1, we've introduced, in addition, a smartphone client. And it's really important to talk about just how important the mobile clients are for Smart IT. So traditionally, I think in this tool set space and in many others, mobile has kind of been seen as something that you do as an additional option, maybe a cut down set of features and functionality for convenience for some users. We really see mobile as another primary interface, another option. So if you're used to using tools like Evernote, either in your professional or your personal lives, there's a new generation of tools which it doesn't matter whether you're holding your phone or your tablet or you're sitting at your desk. And that's our vision for Remedy. When we follow service management professionals around, they don't always spend a lot of time at their desk, and we want to make sure we give them the chance to participate fully in the ITSM process wherever they happen to be. Additional features in Service Pack 1 were some accessibility enhancements, particularly to help with tools like screen readers. We extended the out-of-box language support, so in addition to English, we now support simplified Chinese, French, Italian, German, and Spanish. Plus, this is a Service Pack release, so we included some enhancements based on the many pieces of customer feedback, mostly very positive indeed, that we've had both in the beta program and post-release for Smart IT 1.0. So just to summarize, why this is different. It's a very, very powerful smartphone application. You can use this as a support professional to do pretty much everything. So, if whether that's a field support person out in the field or even a service desk person standing by the coffee machine wanting to check up on a ticket and participate in the conversation, this tool allows you to do that. And especially we help in that regard by leveraging some of the really cool features that are already in Smart IT 1.0, things like integrated knowledge found automatically to help people as they go, and even the smart recorder formless ticket logging that we feel is really going to transform the efficiency of smarter service desks. So without further ado, let me firstly share my browser just to remind you a little of what Smart IT looks like on this platform. So I'm going to log in as Alan And for those of you who've not seen Smart IT before, there's a few really key features here that are worth being aware of. So on the left, there is what we call an update feed. And this saves me having to go searching through long lists of tickets to see what's happening right now. Or I can see all the conversations I'm involved with. I can see things that I'm following. I can see the things assigned to me and what's going on. It's like the heartbeat of my day as a service professional. My smart recorder here, one of the real marquee features of the release, allows me as a service desk person to log a ticket in a single field. So let's say Bob has called me. As I'm listening to Bob, I can actually type what he's telling me. And as I type, this feature over here is helping me by finding me the right articles and the right templates and the right tickets that are similar to what Bob is telling me. So for example, here's a knowledge article which enables me to pull up installation instructions for the device I'm talking about in that field. And for those of you who've seen Smart IT 1.0 pre this service pack release, this will be very familiar to you. But as I say, one of the real headline features of the service pack release is the smartphone client. So what I need to do is, I'm told we're not, apologies, I believe it's not been appearing on screen. Can you let me know if we're seeing the now the smartphone screen?
Yes, I do see the smartphone screen, John.
Okay. I thought so did you see the browser at all then?
Yes, I did as well.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I got pinged to say, sorry, I had a message saying that somebody could only see the WebEx screen. Obviously, that resolved itself quickly. Okay, so here I am now in the smartphone client, and as you see, we load up into the same update feed that I would see if I was on the browser. So one of the things that I think is really terrific about this release, our UX team have done a tremendous job of taking that application and all these features and putting them in a really great form factor for the phone. If I open this menu using the button in the top right, you'll see I have the same features. I have the ticket console. I have the ability to log a ticket. So let's say instead of phoning me, Bob has cornered me in the corridor and needs me to log a ticket for him there and then. And that's a very common scenario we hear from mobile professionals. I can actually use my phone to do exactly the same thing. So here we are. Bob has a problem with his Acme projector. As I type this, Smart Recorder is doing just the same work it was doing for me on the desktop. And you might see the little blue dot that appeared on the light bulb icon there. That's showing me that I can open up the Resources tab. And there I am. I have suggested templates. And importantly, I have that knowledge article. So let's say, for example, I'm arriving on site with my phone at a different office. I can go and search for, I can use the ticket console to search for tickets, but I could even maybe search for the office I'm coming to. So I'm arriving in New York, and I see there's actually a work order to install a projector right there in New York. So I can pull that up. Maybe I assign that to myself for later, and then perhaps I'm setting off to the office. So one of the things I can even do is I can go and search for that office and use the mapping on my phone to provide me directions to that office. Probably here, if it does pop up mapping, because I'm sitting in the UK, it might actually come up with quite a long journey time. But let's say I've just arrived at JFK and I need to check the traffic in the snow. That'll enable me to give my customer a very quick view, just using, when I'm going to get there, just using all the cool features that my phone already has. Let's say then I arrive at the office and I find the device in question. I can search for that ticket, or I could even just scan the device's barcode. And what that does for me is it brings up the asset profile of that device. So here it is. It's an Acme Digital AV presenter. I can see things like whether that device is under warranty. I can see whether it's who owns it, who supports it. So again, I have a full set of information that isn't typically available on many ITSM tools, very cut down mobile clients. I can see that knowledge article right there from the work order. And that even allows me, as I open up the knowledge article, you see it says there's an attached PDF document. So I can even navigate to this resources tab and open that up. And right here in the client, I can now see my work instructions for the work I'm about to do with this projector. So our aim really here is that anybody who wants to do ITSM on the move can do that without really even having to ever borrow a laptop connection or sit down at a computer that they have to find. That even includes the ability to collaborate with my teammates. So perhaps if I wanted to bring Bob into a conversation, I can pick Bob and say, can you help? And the cool thing about that is that Bob will get pinged as with a notification there. I can even talk to the customer. So on this one, Mary Mann was the customer. I can @Mary, and if I flag this as public and say I am on my way, now Mary will, if she's using my IT, which I think always forms the other side of a really neat customer service platform. My IT in the hands of the customers, Smart IT in the hands of the people serving those customers, then she'll see that as a notification. So we're actually connecting the customer to the service provider on the fly in real time. So it's a collaboration tool, it's an assistive tool, and it's a tool that lets us get the work done and resolve this ticket. As I say, that's a really big story in mobile ITSM. We're very, very excited about what this is going to do for people who just want to be picking up their phone to do their job rather than logging in on a desktop. That said, the desktop view has been augmented. As I say, we have a number of different enhancements in this release, including accessibility functions and extra languages, and there's plenty else to find in here as well. So we're very excited about this service pack release. It's added some very, very cool functionality. And so what I'd like to do now is hand over to Tom and the rest of the team, and they're going to talk about some of the tips and tricks for getting started, getting that installed. So let me stop sharing these applications and pass the control over to you guys.
Hello everyone, my name is Ashish. So today I'm going to talk about the UX Patch Installer artifacts and the fortification we have made on the UX Patch and Smart IT, and some of the installer tips and tricks which will help you to install Smart IT in a better way. So I want to assure you first thing that once you install the UX Patch Installer, it will not touch any of your AR and ITSM configurations. Whatever the configurations you have made before the UX Patch installer, before the UX Patch installation, it will remain as it is. While doing the UX Patch installation, it will deploy the social cloud plugin, which requires for the social that we just seen that feed and timeline to work. While deploying social cloud plugin, it makes an entry into the plugin server config.xml, ar.conf, and it will create a folder under plugin server. And once that registration of plugin is done, then the social will work. Which also imports the def files and ARX files as per the ITSM versions. You can always go and check what we are importing into the def and ARX under whatever the Smart IT install folder, Galileo patch, ITSM version, hotfixes, and def. We import the workflows and the def files so that we get a better view of the Smart IT. We are also executing the DRMs, and for example, we add fields for the into the ITSM forms. Whenever we are adding a fields onto the ITSM forms, we are adding into the non-view, and we are not in view, and we are not adding into the view. So it will not affect any of your current customizations or current display. We also create the database views. For example, if you are running a ITSM on the SQL database, Oracle database, or DB2, then it will create a database views onto that database, and out of these database views, we are creating the joins, and we are pulling the data, so it can show into the Smart IT console view. The Smart IT console view service desk agent can see the tickets for the assigned one, low, high priority, critical, etc. We also set FTS and MFS properties on template and work order. So to make these configurations, we make these configurations because the template forms and work order forms get searchable through the global search. We also provide through the UX patch installation a feature that is a leading zero functionality, which is totally optional. If you enable this functionality, then the leading zeros will get truncated. For example, if your INC 000, that 16 zeros will get truncated and you will see only the INC and the ticket ID. For example, INC 10,001. So this will get applied onto the ITSM side and the Smart IT side. From Smart IT SP1, we are giving a feature that you can send an email through the Smart IT. For that, we are importing the email templates through the UX patch installation. So with these templates, we are sending the header and body so that email looks better way. We have in the next slide, which I want to talk about the UX patch installer fortification. We have fixed many defects, but some of the highlights I want to tell you about the UX patch installer. In Smart IT 1.0, we had an issue for the product registry. For example, if you have an AR server which is installed on a machine, so it makes an entry into the product registry under C:\Windows directory. On the same machine, if you are installing the user tool, then it will make another entry to the product registry.xml. While doing the UX patch installation, we go and check for the product registry.xml and check for the AR server entry. First entry is for the server, so we found, according to path, we found the AR.conf and we take all the configuration, that is the database details as well. And as the second entry is for the user tool, we go to the path, but we do not find the AR.conf. So it returns the null values. That's why the installation was getting failed, as it was receiving the null values for the database. From Smart IT 1.0 SP1, we have made, even though if you have several entries onto the AR server product registry, it will pick the correct one and it will find the exact AR.conf and it will make the SQL, whatever the database version is, and it will make the successful installation of the UX patch. In Smart IT 1.0, if you have installed a process designer, and after that, if you have installed a UX patch, then some of the fields of the process designer was getting overwritten. This issue is now fixed into 1.0 SP1, and even though if you have process designer installed previously, then those fields will get retained as it is and will not get overwritten. Another functionality, if you are upgrading the UX patch from drop to drop or version to version, then the server restart is not required, as we are not making any changes to the social cloud plugin. If you are doing a fresh installation of the UX patch, the server restart is needed as we make a registration of the plugin. From Smart IT 1.0 SP1, we have made the version of Java from 1.6 to 1.7. To launch or to install the Smart IT 1.0 SP1, we need a Java version of 1.7. Even though if your ITSM is running on Java 1.6, it will be remain as untouched and you can still continue working your ITSM on Java 1.6. Some of the points which I want to list down for the Smart IT installer fortification. If you have a machine where you have installed mid-tier already and now you want to install Smart IT, then we were getting a conflict for the services, as Tomcat 7 is the name. So from the Smart IT 1.0 SP1, we have made change the service name from Tomcat 7 to Smart IT MIT Tomcat 7. So we do not find any conflict, and both the mid-tier as well as the Smart IT will work and function without any issues. In Smart IT 1.0, we had an issue whether we were checking the passwords from the XML. If you have installed a MyIT 2.0 and upgrading it to the Smart IT 1.0, then we were checking the passwords through the XML file. So if any user had changed the passwords of Smart IT Business and Smart IT System users after the MyIT 2.0 installation, still we were authenticating the XML files, and after the installation getting started, we were failing as the passwords were changed. Now in Smart IT 1.0 SP1, we are going directly to DB check, and we check whether the password is correct or invalid. So if we do not find the password correct, then we are showing an panel where you can enter the new password or correct password which we have changed, and then it will authenticate through the database and it will go further and make the successful installation. We have also changed the log location for the Smart IT logs. Previously we were logging into the Apache folder logs where all the UX patch were getting stored. Now we have changed that directory to the Smart IT install directory under logs, and you will see the logs with the name UX. In Smart IT 1.0, if server is not licensed, then installation was getting failed because in one of the ARX files, we are importing more than 2000 records and installation was unsuccessful. In 1.0 SP1, we have made this change and we are pre-checking whether your AR server is licensed correctly or not. If server is not licensed, then we are throwing error in the pre-check validation, and we were allowing you to change, allowing you to get the license server, and then only Smart IT installation will move further and installation will be successful. I just wanted to highlight some tips and tricks. For example, if you are thinking that installation on the server group environment, and let's take an example that we have 3 nodes, A, B, C. A is admin server and B and C are non-admin servers. So first thing you need to install UX patch on all 3 nodes, that is A, B, C. First, if you are installing on A server, then installer will detect that this is an admin server and it will deploy the binaries, it will make the registration of plugin, and it will import def as well as the ARX files. On B and C server, it will detect that this is a non-admin server and it will only deploy the binaries and it will make the registration of plugin. It will not import def and ARX files as we have already imported onto the A server. If you are planning to install Smart IT with the Oracle database, then we expect that users and time tablespace should exist. If you install Oracle 11gr1 or 11gr2, by default there are 5 to 7 tablespaces get created by default, out of which 2 tablespaces are users and temp. But if you have renamed those tablespaces or if you have deleted those tablespaces, then make sure these users and temp tablespace should exist or you create before the Smart IT installation. Installer logs can be found under %temp% folder, and you can always go through the logs and check what is going on in the installation. If you found any rig failure, you can go to the install directory and logs folder. We import some of the SRM definitions through the Smart IT install. So you can always go and check under the logs folder, the HTML file, the apps folder, and the actual rig log and find it out why the rig log has failed, and you can correct it and again install the Smart IT. After the installation of the Smart IT, if you think that timeline and feeds are not working for me, then you need to check 2 values, or you need to compare the 2, that is connect.properties and SHR key store form. Connect.properties can be found under the Tomcat folder external conf, and key store form will get imported through UX patch. In SHR key store, you need to match 4 items, like first is the key, second is token, third is host name, and fourth one is the port. Make sure in the host name you match the domain name as well with the connect.properties. Once that match is done, then social should work properly and correctly, and you will see the timeline and feeds. As compared to the upgrade, we support only the last version, that is Smart IT 1.0 upgrade to the Smart IT 1.0 SP1. We do not support previous versions like MyIT 2.0 or before for the upgrade. Smart IT onboarding utility you have to run after the UX patch installation and the Smart IT installation. This onboarding utility will migrate the ITSM data to the social server. So whatever your pre-existed incidents and work orders you have, all the work notes will get transferred to the social server and will see in the Smart IT. Even though if you do not run the Smart IT onboarding utility, your Smart IT will work or behave as it is. Only whenever you create a new incident or new work order, for those only items you will see the timeline and field as the data goes into social. But if you want the pre-existed work order and incident work notes as a social and as a timeline and feed, then you have to run the Smart IT onboarding utility. That's what I want to cover for the installation. I want to pass the control to the Tom.
Thanks, Ashish. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you may be today. My name is Tom Adrian. I'm the product development architect in charge of Smart IT. And there's a couple of things I want to go over with you guys today. I want to talk a little bit about how you can extend the Smart IT application to include some changes that you've made in the back-end Remedy ITSM app. So we're going to talk about the configuration approach, what can be done, what can't be done. We'll talk a little bit about how ITSM workflow on the back end can affect Smart IT and what are the approaches for handling those things. We'll talk about approaches for how to take sort of existing features and functionality that's in Smart IT and bring them into, in Remedy ITSM and bring them into Smart IT. We'll talk a little bit about what things are driven by metadata, and then at the end we'll give you a little demo that actually shows an example of some workflow in Developer Studio and how it actually works to actually add a new piece of capability in the Remedy backend and have it exposed within Smart IT. So first, let's talk a little bit about the configuration model and what is it in Smart IT, what does it do, and what it doesn't do. So first thing, the whole idea around the configuration model in Smart IT was to be able to take fields that have been added in the Remedy backend and be able to bring them into the Smart IT UI in predefined areas. So the predefined areas that we have in Smart IT are the incident view, the work order view, task, and person profile. And then within each of these views, there are certain sections. So for example, on the incident view, you have the ability to add fields in the customer card area, in the record summary, in categorizations, in the assignment area, and then there's also sort of a generic area at the end, which is sort of additional information. So in each of these areas, and there's similar areas across work order, task, and person as well. In each of these areas, you have a configuration screen within Smart IT where you can go find the fields that you want to bring in, and then assign those fields to these custom areas. And when we do my little demo at the end, I'll actually show this in process and how you actually go about doing it. The fields, once they're added to the different areas, will show up in the order that you have them listed in within the configuration UI. So you can control the ordering within the configuration UI. Now, one of the things it doesn't do as part of the 1.0 release is give you the ability to add the field anywhere on the screen. So I can't add a field sort of in the middle of information that's already on the screen on the customer card or in the details area. So we don't support that set of capability in Smart IT. There are also some other things that we don't support directly in Smart IT. So on the client side, we don't support sort of full business rule design. So for example, in ITSM, I can go into the Developer Studio, I can have buttons and I can add active links and capabilities to those buttons to do various things within the application. So from a Smart IT perspective, we don't support those active links running within the Smart IT UI. However, we do support anything that's happening on the server side. So anything like filters, escalations, etc. Those all continue to work, and those are all supported on the server side within the AIR server. The other thing that's not directly supported within the Smart IT UI is custom forms. So if I built my own sort of custom dialog or my own custom UI for capturing information, the capability of sort of launching those custom UIs is not supported in 1.0. And there's a set of fields that we don't support out of the box, and we'll go into a little more detail on that in a second. Also, from a Smart IT perspective, the configuration screen that I'm showing here is really focused on doing configuration tasks, meaning I can go pick fields and lay fields out. It's not the interface where I would actually go create a new field. So if I have a brand new field that I want to create and bring into the Smart IT UI, I would still go into Developer Studio, and within Developer Studio I would follow the same rules that I follow for any customizations. I would go in and create an overlay, and within that overlay I would create my additional fields. And then there's a set of steps then to add those fields to the appropriate forms within Smart IT that I can then bring it into this UI. And when I go through the demo, I'll actually show you all the forms from an instant perspective that you need to add the field in to make the fields visible and accessible within Smart IT. So for the fields that are supported and the fields that are not supported, from a supported perspective, we do support regular character fields, datetime fields, selection fields, integer fields, real fields, decimals, and simple menus. So menus that don't have qualifications that require data being read from the current screen. Things that are not currently supported within the Smart IT environment are currency fields, table fields, more complex menus that are either dynamic, meaning that they're building up on top of menus, other data within the system or other fields that are populated by menus. For example, the product categorization screens within Smart IT and ITSM, where you have sort of tier 1, 2, and 3, and each of those are building on top of each other to fill out the 3 tiers. That type of dynamic menu is not supported. We also don't support UI-related things like trim fields, buttons, etc. So those types of capabilities are not currently supported on the Smart IT side. So with that said, you may be asking what types of things should I be looking at if I've made customizations to the Smart IT environment, if I've added fields, if I've gone in and I've added client-side workflows. What are the types of workflows that I may have added into my environment that could cause a problem? So the first set of those workflows are what we're calling business logic-based workflows. So things like field validations, where within the UI, I'm actually doing some set fields or other operations to validate whether the data entered into a field is correct. The suggestion from our point of view in terms of field validation is that those types of things should actually be done on the server side. So while you can do them in classic ITSM as active links, and they do work, the one thing about doing it only in active links is that any API programs or web services or the Smart IT application won't fire those active links. So that means your field validation won't actually be enforced. So as a best practice, and this is a best practice whether you're using Smart IT or not, is that those type of validations should actually be done on the server side. And if they're done on the server side in filters, and you have error messages that come into play as a result of those field validations, that will all be enforced. So if you have a field and you've added some additional validations to those fields via filters, if somebody tries to put into a value in Smart IT that's invalid, those filters will fire. They will evaluate that the data is invalid, and if you have a message, error message associated with that validation, that error message will appear within the Smart IT UI. Another set of example around this is setting values from other forms or using default keywords. Again, if you're doing any sort of data setting or if you want to set field defaults, those again are recommended that we do those on the server side, so leveraging filters as a mechanism for doing that. Which also goes, the same for pushing values to other forms. So if I want to go create records in another form as a result of some interaction on the Smart IT UI, I can do that, but I need to do that via filters. And actually the example I'm going to show you guys a little bit later is going to show exactly that. I'm going to show actually putting in some workflow that actually creates a work log entry based on some data that's being populated in the Smart IT UI. Custom dialogues. So if I had a custom dialogue, and let's say that custom dialogue was asking a question, and then the answer to that question was being returned back into the UI. We don't support custom dialogues directly within the Smart IT environment, but there are different approaches that you could use for sort of mimicking that. So for example, I could take the custom dialogue and the questions that I'm asking as part of that custom dialogue and create those as a field in the Smart IT UI as either maybe it's a selection field, a radio button field, or even a menu, as long as it's a simple menu. And then, again, have any validation or actions that are occurring as a result of that in filters on the back end. And again, I'll show an example of that in the demo of actually creating in this case, a selection field that I use to ask a question that will then cause something to occur in the back end. Fields that are read-only, so you can sort of identify for fields that you bring into the environment, custom fields, whether those fields are read-only or not. But we don't have the ability of making a field read-only dynamically. So dynamically meaning if I change the status of the incident, I want to make some other fields read-only as a result of that. So that's not directly supported. So rather than having those sort of custom interactions happen in the UI, again, we suggest that those are done on the back end via filters. And then service calls from the client side, again, those are something that's not supported. But again, those could always be, service calls could be implemented either from the client side or the server side, so you could implement the same service call on the server side as well. Some other things that to look at are things like navigation. So let's say I've added a button or something within the Smart IT UI, and that button navigates me to my own custom UI or some other UI within the Smart IT environment. Today, we really don't have a good solution for that. There are things that are being looked at, but that's not something that is currently supported. For fields, so the fields that we were talking about earlier, currency fields, dynamic fields, table fields, etc. For things like trim attachments, view fields, things like that, there isn't sort of a good workaround at this point. But for something like a currency field, because AR has the ability of converting data, you could actually, if you were just wanted to show a currency value, you could actually set the currency value into a character field and then have that character field be displayed. You can't edit or interact with the data, but if it was something that you wanted to show, you would have that, you would be able to do it in that way. Some other things that have come up is, what do I do if I want to change some of the way that the out-of-the-box capability works in Smart IT or in Remedy ITSM on the back end? And again, a lot of the answers for these are similar to what we just talked about. If I want to make some additional fields required, then we would want to be able to do you would want to do those as filters in the back end. If I want to change a menu or change the way an existing query works, that's something that's not supported currently. So the query logic for menus is not something that for example, how the categorization menu queries look and things like that. If it's not a field that's a custom field that you're bringing in the Smart IT UI, those qualifications for those menus are built into the Smart IT UI itself. So just changing the menu definition doesn't change the logic within Smart IT around how those queries are done. So that if you wanted to, you could create another menu field with a menu on it and then bring it in as a custom field. That's a possible workaround. But currently, just changing the menu qualification on the AR side doesn't change anything. And then changing out-of-the-box filters, again, because everything that we're doing is still going to AR, everything is going through the AR API, everything is validated through the AR API. Any work that you've done in filters or escalations on the AR backend, if you add filter guides, etc., those all continue to work. Any interactions you're doing on the backend all will continue to work. Process Designer is another question that's come up before around Process Designer and what if you build Process Designer workflows within our application. So in general, if you have Process Designer being used to generate tasks within the native task management application within ITSM, then the generation of those tasks will continue to work as the Process Designer processes are all running on the AR server side, and all of the code connected to those will continue to work. And once the tasks are created, the tasks will continue to work. The one area of Process Designer that is not currently supported is the capabilities within Process Designer to actually pop up dialogues and pop up additional tabs within the Remedy mid-tier UI. Again, for the same reason we were talking before, because we're not supporting sort of custom forms within Smart IT. Those dialogues and tabs will not appear in Smart IT. So you can use Process Designer as long as the processes you're building are server-based processes and processes interacting with TMS tasks. Another thing that you may want to do is take some existing capabilities that's in Smart IT, that's in Remedy ITSM on the back end, and bring those capabilities into the Smart IT UI. So the approach for doing that is very similar to adding custom fields and interacting and adding workflows against those custom fields. The idea being that you would want to take some capability, take the fields that you need to bring into the Smart IT UI, and then you would bring them into the Smart IT as custom fields. And then on the AR system backend, you would have filters that would call the existing ITSM workflow logic to do the work. So for an example, if you wanted to expose activity tracking in Smart IT, what you could do is expose some of the existing fields that are there in Remedy ITSM on the back end, such as the integer fields for time spent, the selection field, and then add a custom selection field that would describe sort of the operation you want to do. You want to add time to an assignee or decrement time from an assignee. And then on the back end, you would have some custom workflow that based on the value of that custom selection field and the values in the integer field, it would push information into the assignment log to track assignments or add additional time or decrement time from an assignee. So that's a possible approach to sort of taking existing functionality, bringing it in, and then integrating it into the Smart IT UI. And I'll show something similar to this in the demo as well. Same thing goes for server level integration. So let's say I have an integration that I want to expose within Smart IT where I want to run an external process. Let's say I've done some automation or you want to run an automation job. And based on some information that's on the Smart IT UI, I want the run that capability within the backend Remedy AR server. So I can use basically the same approach. I can add a field. I can say it's a selection field that will hold the action that I want to have occur on the backend. Then I would add that field to the appropriate forms within the AR system backend, so that I can bring that field into Smart IT as a custom UI. And then I would add the appropriate workflow on the back end to take that value and do the appropriate work to drive the integration. And that's actually what I'm going to show you guys as a demo. So before we get into the metadata driven stuff, let me switch over and I'm going to share my my web browser. Let me see, share. Second. Okay.
We can see the screen, Tom.
Okay, great. So the use case that I have is I want to add a field within the backend that's going to run an external process. And I want to be able to bring this field within the UI, within Smart IT, and then have workflow on the backend that'll fire based on this field being set. So in this very simple example, what I've done is I first started off on the help desk form. And I added a custom field onto the help desk form, which in this case was a selection field called Run External Process. So it's a regular field. If I was doing this in a regular development environment, I would do this as an overlay. So this would be a custom field added as an overlay in the environment. And then I would save this field on the help desk application. And the field doesn't need to be visible. I mean, it can be a hidden field. I just made it visible here so it's easier to see within the WebEx. So once I've saved this field, and now that this field is part and stored on the help desk form, I want to bring this field into a number of other forms that are leveraged by the Smart IT server. So one of those forms is actually a new form that is added as part of the Smart IT user experience patch. It's a form called HPD helpdesk _SLM _join _outer. This is a join form that is added with the user experience patch, and it's leveraged to build out a union across all ticket types within the backend ITSM. And that union is actually leveraged within the console that shows all the tickets within Smart IT. So we add this field here, and because we do queries against this form and other things against it, we want to have any field that we want to expose within Smart IT accessible on this form. So what I've done is I've opened up this form. I went in and selected Add Fields from the HPD Helpdesk form, and I picked the Run External Process field, and I've added it into this form. Now, the one thing you want to make sure on all of the forms that you're adding the field to is that the field is added with the same database name and the same field ID. That's very important because the Smart IT server will actually look across all these different forms to make sure that this field exists with the same database name and the same field IDs across all of these different forms. So when you add the field, you want to double check those things. So that's the first place you want to add the field, is on the outer join form. The next place we want to add it is on the two interface forms that come out of the box with Remedy ITSM. So we have an HPD incident interface form. So this form is used for doing updates and queries into the backend Remedy application. So this is actually a join form built in the backend Remedy application. So for adding the field here, it's actually the same approach. I'm going to add fields from HPD Help Desk, and we just pick the first one in the list. It's a self-join, so that's why there's two listed here. But for the purposes of this, you can just pick the first one, and then bring that field into that form. And then again, double-check the field ID and the database name to make sure that they're the same. Now for the HPD interface create form, this one's a little bit different because this is actually a regular form so it's not a join. So I can't just bring the field in from HPD Help Desk. The best approach to creating the field on this form is that Developer Studio gives you the ability to copy a field. So I can go in, I can say copy this field within the Developer Studio environment, and then paste it onto this form here, and onto the regular form, and then save it. The copying of the field within Developer Studio will copy over the definition of the field, as well as the appropriate field IDs and database name. So you want to do that, and then of course after you create it, you want to double check again to make sure database name and field IDs are the same. One other thing, actually, I forgot to mention that you also want to double check on all these fields that are being created is permissions. You want to make sure that the field has the appropriate permissions for the use case that you're running. So if this is a field that you want to have accessible by anybody using the application, you may want to think about making it a public field, or at least making it accessible to all the incident permission users. So that's the other thing you wanted to make sure you're doing when you're creating these fields, is making sure all the fields have the appropriate permissions. All right, so now that I have the field created on all of these forms, I want to actually update the filter within the incident interface create form that actually pushes the information from the interface form into the HPD Help Desk form. So so the name of the filter is HPD HII create interface _ 100. And in this filter, there's a push fields action, and you'll want to add your custom field into this push field actions, as I've done here. All right, so once I've done those steps, now the field, that custom field that I created, will now become accessible to Smart IT. And we'll show that how to actually bring it in the UI in a second. Before I do that, though, I wanted to show one additional thing. Now I have the fields here. Now I want to build out my custom workflow that's actually going to do the call out to the external process. So for purposes of the demo, I'm doing something very simple, but this could actually be as complicated as you want. So in my simple use case, what I'm doing is I've created a new filter, added it to the HPD Help Desk form. I'm firing it on modify and submit, and I've added in as my run qualification where that custom field I just added is equal to basically true, which is run external process. And then what I'm doing to show the integration here is I'm just actually doing a push into the HPD work log form. So it's going to create something in the HPD work log form. I've hard-coded some information here saying the integration is completed. And this will create a work log entry, which will also get loaded into social and show up in the activity feed within Smart IT. Now, I could have done anything here. I could have done a push fields here. I could have done a service call here. I could have called a web service here. I could have done anything I wanted here to cause this integration to occur. So this is just an example of something you could do, but you can use the exact same approach to do anything that you want within the back end. Right, so let's now go look at the front end, and we'll look at the Smart IT UI, and we'll look at where do we actually go to bring that field into the Smart IT UI. So the place that we're going to go is the configuration tab. And let me log back in. So this is the tab that I talked about earlier that lets you add the field in different areas within our UI. One of the things you'll notice is there's a button here called Refresh Metadata. So, for example, if I've added the field, and let's say I just added the field within the back end, the Refresh Metadata button will go and refresh and update the local definition of the forms within the Smart IT server with the metadata from the AR server on the back end. So you don't need to restart Smart IT. You just need to sort of refresh the metadata first after you've added that field. I've already done that, so I don't need to do that again. So in my case, I already added the field, and I decided I'm going to add it into the customer card. So what happened was, you can see here's my field right here. So and I'll remove it for a second. So the field will show up in this list on the right-hand side, and all the fields that are black with a plus in front of them are fields that I have the ability to bring into the Smart IT UI. Now you'll notice there are other fields here that are visible, but they're gray. Now the reason for that is probably that they don't exist on all of those forms that we were showing earlier. So you do need to make sure that the field exists on all of those forms for the field to be accessible, to be brought into the Smart IT UI. So the back end, so the Smart IT server actually does validate that, validates the metadata, makes sure the field's on all the appropriate forms. But once I've done all the right things, it'll show up like this. So it'll show up as black, and then I can just double click on this and bring that field in, and it'll start showing up on the customer card. So that's all saved. So I'm going to go back now, and I'm going to go create a new incident. So let's create a new incident real quickly, and I'm going to go Alan, and we'll give it a title. A very interesting title, and you'll save the ticket, and we'll bring it up in sort of the ticket modify mode to sort of show the integration working. So I have my ticket created. Now if I go into the customer card area and I say edit, now my custom field is showing up. So I have run external process here, and I can click on this value and then save that. And the activity log will refresh. Just for demo purposes, I'm going to sort of accelerate that and sort of automatically refresh it instead of waiting for the refresh period. And then what you'll notice is my workflow fired, and I have something added into the work log that says integration is completed. So, and then by the way, I just reset that field to null, so it only would ever show up in the case of me setting it. If you wanted to have it always be set, you could have it always be set, but my workflow actually, after it's set to null, back to null, so that it doesn't get stored. So that's a general approach of how you can actually go about adding a field to the back end, adding workflow to the field, and having some capability integrated into the Smart IT UI. And like I said, the back end workflow can do basically whatever you want it to do from an integration purpose. All right, so I'm going to go back now I'm going to stop sharing and go back to the presentation. All right. So the last thing I want to talk about is things within the system that you may change that are driven by the Smart IT server reading metadata from the back end. So these are cases where you may have made some changes to ITSM in the back end. You want those changes to appear in Smart IT. And there are certain cases where we automatically make them appear without you having to do any customization in the Smart IT side. So things like status values. So if you added a new status value, those will be brought in and refreshed within the Smart IT UI. If you've added new status reasons, those would be brought in. Enum values, most enum values within the system, impact, urgency, work info type, etc. If you make changes in the back end, those would be represented in the Smart IT UI. Also, things that we bring in are the localization labels for fields. So we actually read the localized labels from the backend Remedy ITSM localized views. So as long as the backend localized views have the appropriate labels on them, those will be read and brought into the Smart IT UI, even for custom fields. As long as you have the custom fields on all the localized views with the appropriate language translation, that will show in the Smart IT UI. Now, to get those things to show within Smart IT, you do need to do a refresh of the Smart IT server. So you need to do a restart the Smart IT Tomcat server, and then that would bring in the new status values and the enum values. For custom fields, like we showed, you don't need to do that. There's a button on the configuration screen itself that you can press, and that will bring in updated values for custom fields. But for other things, you do need to restart of the Smart IT server. So those are the areas I wanted to cover today. So to give you a little bit more insight into how you can leverage the Remedy AR system backend and the power of the Remedy system backend and bring custom capabilities into the Smart IT UI. So with that, I think Greg, I'll turn it back to you.
Great. Thank you, Tom. And thank you, Ashish and John. Great series of presentations. Gave us a lot of information on Smart IT. I do have some questions that I wanted to ask that came up. I'm just going to start at the top. All the panelists that are unmuted, if you could just answer these. First one is, it's installation related. How do we install as a non-root user, as we cannot get full admin access to an environment according to our system admin? So root limitation.
Yeah, hi, Ashish here. So currently we have a defect in 1.0 SP1 which will get fixed into the 1.1 release, but till now we have workaround available. If you install the non-root system, then the services doesn't get started by default. You need to start it manually. For example, Tomcat, Virgo, OpenFire, all these services you need to start it manually, and then it will start working.
Okay, thank you, Ashish. Another question about when is change management coming?
This is Jon Hall. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah,
I'll take that one.
I mean, I answered that already in the Q&A section, as well in the WebEx tool. In general, we have some limitations on how exactly can be around change management, but I can say it's a fairly high priority. It looks like it won't come in one iteration. We do releases every 3 months roughly. And change is a very powerful application, as you all know. So this will likely have to be rolled out in phases, but it is a fairly high priority, I can say that. So stay tuned for news in that area.
Thank you, Peter. Another question, how does the floating license reservation work? If the mobile app is open and in the background, does it constantly hold or reserve that license?
Yeah, so in general, the user license, is all handled by the server, and that's no different to how it is today when the user accesses certain functionality and the license isn't reserved. The server does that, and it doesn't matter which UI you use. The session handling itself doesn't matter so much. Even on the mid-tier side, if you have not touched the session, it will eventually time out, but that timeout for the session is different from a timeout of the floating user license. As you may know, there's a default timeout of 2 hours. I think the minimum is 1 hour, and that would still apply again to the use of Smart IT as well. So again, as soon as a user uses one of the UIs, whether it's mid-tier or mobile or Smart IT on the web in the universal client, they would get the floating user license reserved. If they continue to use the product, of course, it continues to be reserved. If they stop using it, then eventually it gets returned to the pool after the license timeout. But that is independent of the session management, so to speak.
Okay, thank you, Peter. Next is I cannot choose a product categorization from Smart IT. I can do so from ITSM.
Yes, I can take that as well. In general, we've seen a lot of issues when we designed this. We were looking back at what feedback we get around categorization and CI and service fields, etc. And we've seen a lot of issues. Customers often had misunderstandings around how the CI field works. For example, that the CI field in the mid-tier incident screen drives the resolution, product categorization, etc. And in general, one of the goals of Smart IT is to simplify the interactions. We know that customers work in different ways. Some use CI, some use categorization directly, some use service. In the end, we wanted to support all these, but with a simple interaction. And so we expose currently the resolution categorization. It's not labeled that way in Smart IT, but that's what is exposed. And you can basically use that for routing. It is also what is set if you enter the CI field, the affected CI field. It drives the same categorization field, and so that in the end can be used for routing. So whether again the user sets the categorization directly, or whether they set it through the CI field, in the end it shows up in the screen and it can be used for routing. That's ultimately the use case that most customers want to achieve with it.
Great. Thank you, Peter. Question about during the demo, Tom, I could see you added a field using base development mode. Can this be done via best practice mode?
Yeah, and that's actually the recommendation. It just happened that this environment that I was in, when I was actually starting to create it, it was in base development mode. But the recommendation, I think I mentioned that in the demo as well, should be that you're doing all this via overlays. So you should be in best practice view. You should be creating new fields as overlays. You should be updating any existing forms as an overlay, any existing workflows as an overlay. Absolutely, that's the proper approach.
Thank you. Another question just in general, Java 1.8 and Tomcat 8 support.
I can take this question. So we support Java 1.8 and Tomcat 8 as well, but both these third-party tools and needs to be installed separately.
Yeah, this came up in the Q&A section as well. I just wanted to emphasize that there's a BMC policy out there for these, how we handle new versions. The assumption is that, vendors remain or keep the backwards compatibility in place, vendors like Oracle, when it comes to Java, for example.
And as long as it is, there's certainly an option to call support. Initially it's a pre-certification support. Eventually we'll do the full testing in these newer versions of the products we support as well. But again, that's all documented on bmc.com/support. There's a section about policies, and there's a specific policy around third-party support.
Thank
I
you,
added the
Peter.
link in the Q&A section.
Great, thank you. Another question about are RSS feeds functionality supported with Smart IT?
No, so this is Tom. No, from a UI perspective, bringing an RSS feed into the Smart IT UI is not something that's currently supported.
Okay.
Yeah, I think this may refer to the backend functionality. If I'm not mistaken, we have an RSS feed option in the backend, and I would think that this should still fire no matter what UI you use to create data, etc. But I have to admit that I haven't checked on this.
Okay, thank you. Next question is, how is FTS impacted with installing Smart IT? Are there any things that needs to be modified or reconfigured?
So this is Tom. So there are additional FTS indexes that we add as part of the user experience patch. So we add indexes on the template forms to allow for better searching of templates from the Smart Recorder. So that's sort of one additional place where we're adding FTS indexes. The other thing around FTS in general is that Smart IT leverages FTS quite heavily as part of the whole Smart Recorder and the suggested resource capabilities within the Smart IT application. So you will see that there's a larger load on the AR system, specifically the FTS engine within the backend AR system with Smart IT because of the additional searches that we're doing. So all the searches for resources, all the searches that are done through the Smart IT Smart Recorder, those are leveraging FTS indexes across incident, work order, knowledge articles, outages, and templates.
Great, thank you. Another question, I see with Smart IT, Atrium SSO is verified, validated, works, but what about other JSS, which now works with MyIT 201? Is that something that will be supported or has been tested?
So this is Tom. So I think that's something you probably will need to respond back on that and get a little more information on that.
Okay, thank you. And just looking for any last questions that anybody may have. One I see here, and it's around configuration, is the configuration defined on Smart IT configuration tab specific to each and every user and stored for when a user logs back in, so they will get their unique views every time, so it's persistent?
Yeah, no, it's not a per user setting. It is a system setting. So for the Smart IT application, once you've gone through that configuration, all users of Smart IT within that Smart IT tenant will see those fields within the UI.
Okay, thank you, Tom. Let me just look for a few more questions there, and we're going to wrap up based on time. One question that came up is just, can we work and save offline with our mobile devices and then sync back when there's network access available?
Hi, this is John. That's a roadmap feature at the moment. It's not currently in the 1.0 client, but it's something we're looking at implementing in future.
Thank you, John. And on the GSS, there was looks like a question that's really an answer that Jamie posted about an article of it being supported from a JSS perspective, and a link was provided. So you could look at that link and get additional information. And one of the last questions we'll have time for is how to uninstall the user experience. What forms data needs to be deleted? Can we run the uninstall for the user experience, but it doesn't delete the social plugin and imported data? Is there any way of doing that?
Yes, so Ashish, I can answer this question. So we do not, while doing the uninstallation, we do not delete the workflows which we imported. We just delete the binaries. That's the way how all installers works. So, but if we need the details, what we are importing, we can circulate an Excel sheet, what we are importing to the UX patch.
Now and forever, we bring IT to life.